What is up, everyone? Sean here, and this is my review for Detroit. I'm gonna, take the simple approach today. Didn't want to, set up the big screen or big green screen and everything, just because, it's just one of those games that I don't want to quite do that for, and just wanted to just want to sit down and, talk to the mic with you guys and just simply share you my thoughts about this whole game here. Now, this whole game was just like a pretty funny story. There's a pretty funny story behind it. I mean, David Cage has been pretty well known, or rather infamous, for making these very pretentious storytelling games that involve with a lot of button prompts and really come out to be just interactive movies at the end. And he really tries to make it like the next revolutionary thing, the way he talks about his games. And he always has all these celebrities make their appearances and stuff like that. He obviously has either friends, or is able to just come up with some money enough for these celebrities to come on and make an appearance. And don't get me wrong, they're pretty nice to see. Like we see William Dafoe and Beyond Two Souls back in the day, or this time around we see some familiar faces too here, which I will get into. But point being, these games they definitely have a special place in the gaming world for pretty clear reasons, if you kind of understand what David Cage is all about. But today I want to talk about Detroit, not really talk about David Cage himself, and just want to go right into it now. So I wanted to bring it down to like a movie style kind of review, because it really kind of feels like a movie. But anyways, I wanted to do a non-spoiler review and do a spoiler review or spoiler kind of talk later on in the video, which I will give you guys a signal, with a little commercial break or something, and then you guys can leave if you want, or if you want to hear me talk about spoilers, you can go right ahead and still join me with the spoiler talk. But anyways, my overall thoughts on this whole entire game is that I liked it more than I thought I would. I thought it was gonna be like a complete disaster, or just gonna be really weird or really awkward. Now there was some awkward stuff in there. I was like really embracing some of the really awkward and creepy scenes with how David Cage does with some of the girls in his games, especially with the infamous Ellen Page incident, with her entire body parts, or all of her body parts, being modeled for whatever reason, and they were able to break the camera, and her entire body was shown throughout the internet. So that was a pretty big disaster when it first happened. I remember when it first showed up on the whole Google Images search, and it was just really weird. And that's just how these games usually turn out to be, but this time around not so much. But there are some still, maybe a little bit of hints, but it's really subjective, and it's really up to you to decide whether these things are creepy or not. But there are some fan servicey things you'll probably see in this video anyway, depending on what kind of gameplay I put up here. But you will see some fan servicey stuff in some parts of the game. I will talk about what I liked about the game and what I didn't like about the game without spoiling it, and talk more about that probably during the spoiler talk. But what I liked about the game is obviously the graphics, the music, the voice acting overall. I think the overall voice acting here this time around is pretty good in my opinion. It's pretty well pulled off, and it all sounds pretty natural with these characters anyway. Even if some people will say, oh, the voice acting for some of the characters were pretty awkward, blah blah blah. It just seemed natural to me anyway, because it really fits these robots, these machines that are trying to become human. And over time, they really do sound more and more human for the most part anyway. And again, I think these voice actors did a really good job, especially the veteran actors anyway, which I definitely want to get into next, which is, the veteran actors that were cast into this game this time around. One of them was Lance Henriksen, who is very famous for the Alien movies as the synthetic or whatever, which is really funny. It's kind of like a reverse thing because Carl is human this time around. Very old, but he's human nonetheless. And although he may kind of operate on a lot of machinery, but you kind of get the point. He's still human nonetheless, and he's like the painter who plays as Carl the painter, who is the owner of Marcus, one of the main characters of the game. And almost forgot to mention, I really wanted to mention this as well. Lance Henriksen also played as General Shepard from Modern Warfare 2, which was one of the most memorable Call of Duty experiences of all time for me, especially with Shepard. Having that voice, stuck in your head whenever you finish playing that game. He definitely left that impression on me when I was younger. Along with Clancy Brown, who plays as Lieutenant Hank Anderson in the Detroit Police Force, who's in my opinion one of my favorite characters in this entire game, along with Connor, who is one of the other main characters in this game. And then I think that's pretty much it for the memorable actors anyway, from what I can remember. But otherwise, these main characters are relatively new with their actors anyway. I think the only one that really comes to mind is Brian Deckard, who plays as Connor, because he's just such a memorable character. And that's something I really want to talk about next, which is Connor. Connor is definitely my favorite main character out of the three. And he's just... He plays that character so well as, the robot who, over time learns humanity and learning the emotions as he's discovering over time. And it's, up to him whether to decide to stay as a machine or deviant, and that's up to you guys to decide his fate, whether he becomes either of those two things. But his journey over time is really interesting, and his relationship with Anderson is really just funny, and it's pretty comical, but still interesting, and it still fits within the Detroit kind of vibe and doesn't really stick out like a sore thumb or anything. That it doesn't feel tacked on. It all just wraps in nicely and really fits right into what Detroit is really trying to convey here, which is humanity within these machines who first turn out to be just like servants or just tools to help you carry out your day, like shopping for you, or just mowing the lawn or maintaining parks or anything like of the sort, janitor, office work, that kind of thing. But these robots are taking these people's jobs, and that's why the people are going against these robots. And that's over time putting them in a state where now they're starting to become self-aware, and that's kind of where the whole singularity theory comes in, as a lot of scientists and philosophers and these theorists like to talk about, especially nowadays because of technology advancing, which basically explains the possibilities of these intelligent robots or advanced robots or AIs becoming self-aware, and they can be able to become self-aware and possibly go against the humans, and and war can probably break out or something depending on what the robots do. But yeah, basically that's what Detroit is really all about. These robots becoming deviant, as they would like to say in the game, and they want to start a rebellion with Marcus as their leader, and they want to fight for their freedom and their own rights and be equal with the humans, because they see themselves now as another form of intelligent life like humans. So that's like pretty much the basics of what the story is all about, what the conflicts and what the threats and plots and stuff like that are present in the game. And meanwhile, we have Connor, who is investigating these cases where why are these robots becoming deviant, or how are these robots becoming deviant, and there's murders and all along the way, and some drug uses and stuff like that with the whole red ice. It's pretty fascinating. I do like the initial point of what the game has to offer, and like I said, I don't know if I said it already, but I like the music. The soundtrack is fantastic. Obviously, a lot of these technical aspects are done really well with the camera angles, the lighting, and stuff like that, and especially the music. Like I said, soundtrack is pretty on point. Really brings up these moods really nicely. Whatever it's trying to present, it definitely matches with the scenes and stuff. Really, really enhances the experience. So, and also the whole motion capture thing is really cool. To see these characters' expressions, stuff like that, really look lifelike. It really helps with the immersion, and the fact that it is one of the plausible scenarios that could happen in real life is really what makes it fascinating at first, and it really takes you in and puts you in this immersion, and that's why Detroit gets this kind of attention here because of this actually being kind of plausible in some ways. We are going to eventually have robots walking around, and people are already building robots, especially in Japan, and the whole thing with exosuits and stuff like that. Stuff like that will just become part of the norm eventually in our lives. But for now, we're robotless, and we're gonna have to keep waiting on these robots and possibly see this scenario possibly play out just like what we see in Detroit, or something similar or something. But yeah, anyways, back onto the music. It really conveys the mood nicely. It's well done. It's obviously well produced. There's a budget behind it, and like I said, the motion capture is great. Visuals and everything is great. So sounds, presentation, and everything are obviously great. So. And also the controls are pretty good for what they are. Obviously there's the button prompts, especially if you play on casual. If you play on experience though, then that's where the trademark motion controls kind of come in. You can tilt your control and stuff like that. You can just shake it back and forth or something depending on what is really trying to tell you. It's kind of neat. For if anyone wants to try it, but I did on casual as this is my first David Cage game, so I just stuck with casual just to play it safe and just make sure I'm able to have a pretty pleasant experience here. So, but yeah, I think overall that's pretty much all I can say for the things I liked. There are like I said, Connor and Hank, their chemistry is so great. I love their gameplay in comparison to the other ones. It really kind of plays like a detective movie, not detective movie, one of those like detective games, kind of Batman sort of inspired sort of gameplay. You do have like the Sixth Sense kind of gameplay thrown in there too. Every time you hit right trigger, I believe, you can look around, pause everything in your world, and just look around for any evidence or any points to investigate, and you can scan them and check out the description of each thing, and it really adds up to your arsenal of information that you can use later on to investigate further into whatever point of the story is, or whatever choice you want to use, or whatever prompt you want to pick whenever you're talking to certain characters. And it will lead to certain paths with your character depending on what you choose and stuff like that. So obviously there is some replayability and depending on what you want to do, but I will say that it is very effective the first time. That's how these story games are, and it definitely is fun at the first time. So these story games, that kind of have that feel to it, but there are multiple routes, and it's pretty interesting to see all these cutscenes as much as you can, and there is some degree of skill to it, because you have to look around, you have to look into the certain spots in order to find this certain thing, to unlock this certain thing, and then now you can see this certain cutscene or something. It's really neat, and the concept of it is really neat. So it's obviously it is a game, but it's just very minimalistic in comparison to the other games, but it is still, it does require some sort of skill to some degree, like searching around, stuff like that. It exercises those parts of a video game. So for those who don't call it a video game, I mean, I can understand why, but it's at the minimum it is a video game, but kind of barely, sort of. It's more, in the end, it's more like an interactive movie at the end of this day here. But it's a good one, in my opinion, and it's definitely one of the more well-produced ones this time around. What I didn't like about the game here was Marcus. Marcus, overall, he had a lot of potential. He had a lot of weight on his shoulders, because he is the leader of the resistance, or the revolution or rebellion, however you want to say. But overall, it just had a pretty weak impact for what I was looking forward to. And some of the characters were just like really obnoxious, especially with North. I definitely will explain in the spoiler section, but it was just really obnoxious, and the way it ended, or the way it kind of wraps up, it still kind of leaves you hanging, at least for me anyway. And the way the humans are portrayed is most of the part kind of exaggerated, and it kind of takes you out of the immersion a little bit because of the way the humans react and stuff like that, especially with the media, especially with the authorities, who are the antagonists of this game, and they just shoot you right away or something. There were parts like that in the game, unfortunately. So it kind of is just like, really, is that how it's gonna wrap up like that? That sort of feeling. That's what I didn't really like about the game here. There are some really douchey characters in there, like Kamsky and so on and so forth, but I think for the most part here, the character's story that really shows off the biggest faults is unfortunately Marcus, and it just shows a lot of these gaps. And not to say that everyone else's story is perfect. I would say Kara, even though as much as I do like Kara and Alice and Luther and all that, they really don't add too much impact to the whole entire story of Detroit. And it's nice to see the relationship between those three and all, but it could have gone on without these characters, in my opinion. Obviously, they gotta throw in a female character somehow, so they just, I guess, throw them in there. I don't want to say too much without spoiling it, so I can't. Point being, I wish for more from Kara and Alice and Luther. We do see quite a bit, but we don't really see how significant they are as part of the revolution here. Even, of course, Connor has a significant impact, because he's obviously investigating all these points of the revolution and what is the significance of something like RA9. And there are also other gaps during other parts of the story, and we can talk about all the plot holes and these little inconsistencies all we want, little very nitpicking little parts we can say about the game here. One example I can say is, why is Kara cutting her hair early in the game? Like, what's the point of that? Why can't she just digitize her hair, to a different style or something, instead of cutting it, which happens early in the game? So it's like, what is the point of that? You could just, again, you can just digitize the hair, or you can change your hair color and all that. And that's like one of the little plot holes or inconsistencies, or just things to nitpick and kind of make fun of from Detroit. But anyways, yeah, so that's pretty much it. I think the weakest part really is a lot of the writing in this game for Detroit, and that's like really important for a story-driven game. So unfortunately, the writing is not quite perfect, and probably the reason why I would give it a lower score, because unfortunately the writing here. But back on to my overall thoughts here. It's like I liked it a lot more than I thought I would, and it's not a complete disaster. And I will say this. It's probably the best, if not one of the top, David Cage games I've played or I've experienced somehow in some way. I watched the rest of them on YouTube, and from there I believe, in my opinion, Detroit is definitely the most fun or just updated, obviously. But in terms of like the characters, the story, the production value, the way things go, the lack of jankiness, this is definitely the best one by far, and that's all I gotta say about it. So without spoiling it, with all the non-spoiling thoughts about the game, I'm going to give it a rating now. So overall, Detroit Become Human deserves a 7 out of 10 from me. Just a solid 7. Obviously the visuals are there, and there's a lot of things there are quite a number of things to like about the game. It's not a complete disaster. I really like Connor. I really like Hank Anderson. I really want to see more from those two, maybe in DLC or something, but I think this is done. Unfortunately, it's one of those games that really don't have DLC beyond the base game, and it's something you kind of want in these kind of games, just to expand on what happens next and what happens with these characters. You just kind of want to see more from that. I don't know, maybe things may change. Maybe David Cage will take advantage of the DLC kind of business model, but I think for the most part it's done, and this is what we have. And for what is presented, it's not bad, and it's a 7 out of 10 for me. And but I will say also that I can't completely recommend it. It's pretty pricey. It is $60. Yes, the production value is there, but it's a story-driven game, and the replayability is very shaky depending on how you really feel about these kind of games. Because from my point of view, as someone who was the one playing in the Let's Play, it definitely loses a lot of that for that magic after you play this game on your first playthrough. That first time kind of magic, that feel gets lost in your second time when you're trying to get other scenes and other paths and cutscenes and stuff like that. It's just how it is with these story games, and that's just how I feel about it. So, but anyways, that's all I gotta say. Wait for it to go on sale or something. It's definitely something to experience some way or some shape or form. And it's depending on how much it is by the time it goes on sale or something, I would say give it a shot. Like I said, it's the best David Cage game out there on the PS4 so far. I don't know if we'll see another one anytime soon. There's a lot of production time put into it, so obviously he's probably going to put a lot of production time into the next one, and we'll have to see what the next one is really all about. Is it going to be Detroit 2 or something, or Heavy Rain 2? No idea, but it's kind of interesting to see what he does next, always, because of how he is, how pretentious he is, and how he treats these games, and as simple as these games are in comparison to other games of today. I don't know, it's just interesting, no matter what. So anyways, I will stop talking about that part, so I will go on to the spoiler portion next. So stick around if you want to listen to me talk about spoilers. And if you haven't played a game, if you don't want to be spoiled, of course, you guys can go ahead and turn off the video now. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. And for those who want to listen to me in the spoiler section, you are more than welcome to stay. So So we're gonna go into the spoiler portion of Detroit Become Human after this commercial break. This channel is sponsored by Loot Crate, the monthly subscription box that's always filled with surprises for gamers and geeks alike. If you're interested, go to lootcrate.com/Hawke525, and after choosing your crate, type in promo code Hawke525 for a 10% discount. The link and promo code will be in the description box below. Thanks guys, and hope you enjoy the show. Okay, so we are in the spoiler section now. So I don't know where to start, but I really did want to talk about Marcus's story because he, like I said, he has the most weight on his shoulders. He is the leader of the revolution for these robots. This entire nation of robots, essentially, he's the one representative. He's the leader. He's the voice. You know, he is the chosen one, I guess. And he is RA9 for whatever reason. I mean, I don't know. That's what we assume anyway. But one of the faults here is that it never really fully explains what RA9 is. It's just a combination of numbers and letters, and we don't really get to find out. We never really get to fully explore what the significance of that is. We don't really get to see any past information about that, or descriptions, or anything of the sort. At least in an open sight anyway. But I think overall, I think everyone has been saying, or a lot of people have been saying, that RA9 is really something no player has able to just easily find. You just have to assume that RA9 is just some sort of god, or it's just this kind of Jesus-like figure who will come and save the robots or something like that. And Marcus is that kind of entity or whatever. He has the power to convert robots and free them from their programming and let them become deviants and be self-aware and let them be what they want to be. And they for the most part join Jericho, which is like this, which is the group, the resistance or whatever. And they obviously want to fight for their freedom, and they are sticking to Marcus no matter what choice you make. But there is one character that really sticks out to me and is like a freaking thorn to my side, and that's North. North is all about violence, and I don't know. It's just really, she's just too much on it, in my opinion. And of course, there's someone else who wants to take the peaceful route, but the whole point of Jericho is to try to, obviously have the robots earn their right to have these equal freedom or equal rights and freedom, obviously. And you want to look good doing it, right? You want to have the people agree with you and stuff like that. But she seems to really try to spread fear on the humans to make them look up to the robots rather than look at them as equals, in my opinion, anyway. That's what North seems to be like, because she always instigates violence. She always wants you to kill people, or anyone who gets in their way, and it just seems like it would make you really bad. And even if you disagree on her, she will say, "Oh, you're the hope of Jericho," and stuff like that, which kind of really conflicts with the dialogue choice and stuff like that. She doesn't, it's just weird. It's just like it feels like she never really fits in my opinion. I feel like she could have had a rebellion against Marcus and later on in the story, depending on how your relationship is with her, because if you up your relationship enough, you get to fall in love with her, you get to have a romantic relationship later on with Marcus and her. And I don't know, it's just and it would have made sense if you didn't, if you disagreed with her all the time. It would have made sense for her to kind of go against you, and she becomes a bad guy at that point. That would have been really interesting, just see that happen, and have the big battle between North's group, who wants to earn their rights and possibly rule the nation with violence, versus Marcus, who wants to, peacefully take equal rights here. So it's just that would have been a much more of an interesting, point in the story, but we don't really get to see that. It's just really becomes really weird with North in the group, even though she gets disagreed upon all the time here. I think I think Simon does take North's side, but otherwise, the whole point of Jericho is to earn equal rights and be equal with the humans, rather than just try to rule the nation with having the robots rule the nation and make the people or humans fear the robots for what they've done in the past. Because these robots have been serving them, and they've been pushed around, and that they couldn't take it anymore, at least these deviants anyway. So I don't know, I really felt like by the end of it, North never really fit in the group. And like I said, it would have been really interesting to see her reach that boiling point, to a point where she betrays him, stabs him in the back, and maybe in a literal sense too, but figuratively and literally maybe. But to see her form another group within Jericho to rebel against Marcus, in order for her to have her own gratification or something, again, that would have been really kind of interesting to see. All the more routes that could happen if you chose to be violent. Yeah, you can be with North, have her be romantically attracted to you, or if you disagree her all the time, then that consequence or the route can open with North becoming rebellious to you and something like that. I don't know. To me, that might have been interesting. Maybe people disagree with that, which I understand. But if you want to talk about that, leave the comments in the section below. If you want to touch upon that point there. But that's just how I felt about it. It's just, and not to mention that whole part with the president is pretty bad in my opinion. I think that's probably the only time I didn't like what the voice acting is. The president's voice actor or actress, it's a British woman trying to sound American, and I'm not trying to offend that voice actors by any means, but if you're gonna have American president, then you could have just recruited some or casted someone who can actually do an American accent. I think maybe they ran out of time or something. Maybe she was the last person to record those lines or something, and she had very little time to perfect that American accent, because it really becomes obvious that she was struggling with the American accent. You might as well. You could have might as well have a British woman be be the president or something. I don't know. That could have been interesting, but even though, yeah, you have to be a U.S. citizen in order to be a president. But I think U.S. citizens can have English accents, right? But anyways, that's a whole another story. It's just I don't know. It could someone else could have been casted, and it could have been someone with an American accent. We had Clancy Brown, we had Brian Deckard, so why not just cast another American actor, to play the female president? So it's just that could have been resolved that way, and it could have been a lot less awkward to hear for these scenes to play out. But yeah, that also plays into the point where these humans are just like exaggerating the reactions of like, oh, these robots are becoming rebellious. We should get rid of them and throw them into the recycle center and just get rid of them, blah blah blah, instead of trying to be diplomatic about it and try to work things out and stuff like that. I felt, and it kind of goes back to Marcus, where by the end of Marcus's story, it only feels like it's, the half of it, half of the problem is resolved and not the rest of it, because we don't really get to see what happens after. We don't really get to see how humans and androids settle down with each other in the city, or the entire United States of America, because that's, apparently a nationwide phenomenon, besides Detroit. Like, we don't really get to see Marcus signing a peace treaty with the president or anything like that. We don't really get to see the actual end result. We only get to see the, I guess, the climax, and that's about it. And we don't really get to see much else. I felt like Connor and Kara are much more conclusive, but with Marcus, we're only at the climax here, and don't really get to complete it. We don't get to see Marcus build a nation of robots or androids here. We don't, like I said, we don't get to see the peace treaty being signed. We don't really get to see the diplomacy between Marcus and the president here. So we don't really see if the humans actually see or coincide with the robots for the name of peace. We don't really get to see that. We just only see, we achieve peace, and then it just go, yeah, and that's how it ends. There's no secret ending. There's no extra ending like Connor and Kara go through, or what we see here. So yeah, that's just how I felt about Marcus. It just really doesn't feel complete. There's just a lot of gaps in his story. And especially with the beginning here, the beginning could have been a lot better. It's just like, wow, really? You just have this character, Leo, lighting the fuse here, but he's just like a really shoehorned asshole. Obviously he's such an obvious like villain in these chapters, in these beginning chapters for Marcus. It just comes off as shoehorning, and you just kind of just like really, you don't really get to sympathize with Leo, and you don't get to see how Carl might have mistreated him or anything like that. Obviously, Carl is still likable, but we only get to see why Leo's behavior is justified by any means. So he's just really, it's just straight pure asshole, and just like, okay, he's kind of like a cheap character in a way, and it's just like he's just there for the sake of starting Marcus's story, really, of how he becomes, how he finds Jericho and becomes the leader of Jericho and leads the revolution and everything. Oh, just because fucking Leo is an asshole, So, like I said, the weak writing really comes a lot from Marcus's story. Now, I did want to talk about more on Kara, because I also felt like she could have been the next weakest one, in my opinion, after Marcus, because her whole thing doesn't really add impact to the main part of the story, which is these deviants becoming or trying to fight for their freedom. So Kara isn't really trying to do that. She's just trying to run away from the whole thing and cross the border and start a new life, And obviously, by the end of it, yeah, you kind of, maybe assume that she will have a happy life because, Rose knows people across the border, and they welcome the robots or new people like Kara. So you just assume that Kara is able to get to that house or get to that household and just be happy or something. But still, it really could have been a lot better. It could have added more to this whole revolution if Kara was a part of it, somehow. Really, people who are involved with this revolution is Marcus and Connor. Whether you have Connor choose between becoming a machine or becoming a deviant, it still adds impact to the story with the revolution. Meanwhile, Kara, again, she's just running away from it, and you don't really get to see Kara interacting with the main characters a whole lot. I mean, the only thing you get to see is Kara, going up to Marcus is just like, hey, we gotta, I think, oh, we need these, we need some sort of ID so we can get to the bus or something. And Marcus is like, oh, yeah, well, that's cool, whatever. That's pretty much about it. And Kara, with Connor, you have to do some really specific stuff in order to have Connor and Kara really interact with each other. Not really, and that's not really anything in any part of the main story here. You just have to really kind of do some specific things. Like, for example, have Marcus die during the boat, the ship raid on against Jericho from the authorities, and then go get Kara to the church with Alice, obviously. Have Connor be a deviant and survive, obviously, and then those two can interact because you get to play as Connor during the church scene or the church chapter, and have him walk up to Kara, and then they get to kind of interact with each other. But there's not a whole lot to it, even if you achieve that somehow, which is kind of disappointing in a way. So the only other major interaction with Connor and Kara and Alice is when Kara and Alice are running away from Connor, assuming that you screw up the whole stealth mission with the street and stuff like that. Assuming that you screw that up, you get to have this scene with Connor going into a chase with Kara, if you choose to do so, obviously, because Anderson tells you to, stay put or whatever, and if you disobey him, that lowers his relationship with you. But you get to chase Kara down, and that's really the only time you get to interact with them. So it really depends on what kind of choices you want to make or what route you want to take. So if you want to be really friendly with Anderson, you're not going to really get to see that. But if you want to, throw that out of the window, then you kind of get to see that interaction with Kara. But otherwise, you don't really get to see too much from Connor and Kara. Kara doesn't really have too much interaction with these these two androids, especially with the main androids. So she isn't able to tie herself into these stories, unfortunately. So she just feels really isolated comparing to these two. Connor and Marcus, either they can side with each other or fight against each other. That definitely ties up really nicely for those two. But you kind of begin to question yourself, why is she really there, other than just emotional story with these two girls and Luther. It's kind of nice and all, but it's just kind of it seems like a in my opinion, it kind of seems like a sort of a bonus or a DLC or something. And Marcus and Connor are really the two main characters here for reals. So I don't know, that's how I feel about Kara's story. I mean, yeah, they're likable, obviously, but the overall impact, it just seems really insignificant in comparison to Connor and Anderson. Obviously, they're the police that really question themselves whether they're on the right side or not. That definitely adds to the main story. So again, I don't know. It's just they just try to run away from it, and I don't know. It just really comes off as kind of subpar or kind of weak to me anyway. So, and man, not to mention, just to really touch upon Kara's story here, it's really fucked up because you finally get to the bus stop, and you're that much closer to getting into the bus and crossing the border and everything. But in order for you to cross the border, relatively in one piece, you have to steal a ticket from a family, which is really fucked up. And then also you have to sacrifice one of the people at the security check. So you can either sacrifice Luther, which you obviously don't want to, Jerry or Rose. I haven't chose Rose, so I don't know how she sacrifices herself, or does she get arrested, or does she get shot or something? I don't know. I'm not too sure how that happens, but you have the option to use Rose as a means to get to cross the security check. So it's just, to me, that's definitely not the best ending in my opinion. And obviously, even if, or excuse me, going back to the bus stop, obviously you get to talk to Todd and all, which is fine. Depending on how you did, you can either find peace with him, kind of close up that chapter with him, or he probably most likely turns out to be that bad guy or whatever, or the antagonist against Kara and Alice. Depending on how you do with that part, it's really up to you. But the other branching route from the bus stop is that boat ride. And I didn't really get to experience that myself because I didn't know that you can actually cross that part, even though it said, oh, you gotta find a ticket, so you're blocked off. So I thought you were just blocked off forever. So I was just forever trying to find a ticket without stealing from the family, and I just wound up getting shot right then and there. And that was it for me. And I was like, oh, what the hell, And so it forced me to think that I had to steal from this family to cross the border in one piece. Now, if you really don't care about that family, I guess it's a happy ending for you, but it is messed up in a way because you are stealing from a family that has a father, a mother, and a baby. So I don't know, man. It's really messed up. And I do gotta say that the baby did have some sort of cat ear, sort of like onesie pajama thing going on, or blanket or something, which I thought was pretty funny. Maybe maybe specific people who are playing it are gonna be like, oh god, her baby has cat ears. She's a fucking weeaboo or something. So you're probably gonna steal from the family or something. But that's probably adding a very specific thing to the meta. But anyways, but yeah, even if you try to avoid that part, the boat ride, my god, that thing is not a good ending either. So that whole bus stop part isn't gonna really lead you to the best endings, in my opinion. I think the best endings you can get from Kara, Alice, and Luther is going towards the recycling center, because you don't have to and if you play the right cards here, you don't have to necessarily sacrifice the robots that you feel that were significant in your story, because you can also get the robots from the master's house or basement, which that robot is referred as a screaming robot because he plays as a distraction during that final part of the recycling center chapter. And along with that, Jerry is very willing to sacrifice himself to help you escape from the recycling center. Or if you're lucky enough from the early part of the game, and if you explore the right places with Kara and Alice, you can find someone named Ralph who kind of has that killer vibe to him. He's kind of like a psychopath sort of guy. He comes from being a robot who got beat up by a lot of people and got really messed up. I kind of read up on that, and his name is Ralph. So you get to meet up with him if you get to this recycling center later on, and he's got that trademark scar on his face, and he becomes one of the sacrifices. So assuming that he is willing to do it, you have the option to do so. And also, no matter what you do with Jerry, whether you sacrifice him or not, he doesn't really add more to the cutscenes at the end. You don't really get to see him at the extra ending or the secret ending with Kara, Alice, and Luther. He just kind of just disappears. So in a way, you can use Jerry and you wouldn't feel as bad, because again, he's very willing to help Kara and Alice and Luther escape. So it's he's definitely one of the usable options, in my opinion, along with Ralph or the screaming robot from the master's basement. So again, if you play the right cards, you can get the best ending from that route. So, but because by the end of it, you, Alice, and Luther are together without having to steal the bus ticket from that family. So that's pretty much, you know, all you can do to consider that as a best ending, because you're not really hurting anyone else as unwillingly, you know, going to be a part of your benefit, you know. So you only have Jerry, Ralph, and the Screaming Robot, who are all willing to help you out to achieve your goal. So that's in my opinion the best ending that you can get from Kara, Alice, and Luther. So and obviously the way you get to do that is obviously you have to save Luther, but have yourself purposely get captured from the authorities. So that's how you get thrown into this recycling center in the first place. So very specific steps, and it's like it really spits you in the face, sort of, in a way, even if you achieve the fully achieve the escape and all that. So it's just, I don't know if there's really a way for you all three of you to survive that whole boat ride. So yeah, so it's just like, it's just really hard to achieve that. If there is a way to have all the three survive during the boat ride, please tell me in the comment section below. But I think otherwise someone is gonna die one way or another in that boat ride. Whether it's Luther's gonna die. I think Luther is a lot easier to die during that boat ride, and then Kara is next up, I think, or Alice. You know, I think the best thing you can get from that ending is Alice, because, you know, Alice is the one who wants to live a life of a kid or whatever, or a little girl or whatever, a normal girl, and it's more fitting for Kara to sacrifice herself to have Alice live on and stuff like that. So she, you know, since she's a child or whatever, but she is a robot, but, you know, whatever. It's, you know, in the name of morals, Alice should be the one who survives over Kara and Luther. They're kind of like the adults, and they're gonna have to, you know, look out for the child. So that's just how I see it. So that's most likely what's gonna happen with the boat ride, I think. And if there is a way for all three of them to survive the boat ride, then all right, you know, awesome. But I think it's probably difficult to do so. So but yeah, again, the best ending you can get with these three is that recycling center part if you play your cards right. So and obviously with Connor, the best ending you can get with Connor and Anderson is have Connor become a deviant, and then have him, if he survives, of course, if you trust him with Marcus, Connor will go to the assembly plant or storage facility or whatever within CyberLife, and then try to awaken the rest of the robots, or these group of robots. And after you go through the whole thing with the fake Connor or the other Connor, and you have to answer these questions. And this is where my one complaint comes in with Connor's story here. Forgot to mention in the non-spoiler portion, but yeah, it's a big spoiler. So the fate of pretty much everyone in Detroit become human in the story really winds down to these questions. Well, I mean, I guess not everyone, but a big part of that comes from Connor having to answer these two questions correctly, and that's the name of the dog, which is pretty easy, but freaking the name of his son. You know, these two questions are the ones to really lay the fate on Connor, whether he survives or not, which is kind of a dumb way, because in my opinion, that could have been all in just one cutscene and not having button prompts for it. But yeah, I mean, sure, it's all about the investigation gameplay and all that stuff that really adds up to it, and then kind of tests your skill as an investigator. Sure, I guess, but I don't know. That's just such a weird way to be that climactic part of that little arc there with Anderson holding the gun with against the two Connors, and has to choose between which one's the real Connor. And really, these two questions are the way to do it. I mean, first off, the way the fake Connor was talking was pretty obvious. You know, he's like, "Hey, I'm the real Connor. Give me the gun." And you know, Connor, the real Connor, was being rational, like, "Hey, you know, why don't we, you know, you can tell us by asking questions and something like that." Which could have, like I said, could have been all in one cutscene, but you know, I mean, I guess you gotta be good at investigating, and I don't know. It's just weird for having those two questions be like such a big pinnacle part of the story or the fate of Connor. I don't know. It's just not just probably the personal preference here of how I didn't like that part, but whatever. It's, you know, you do get a pretty touching scene because it is a big test of Anderson's relationship with Connor. You know, depending on how you did with Connor's story, you know, you can be really good friends with him by the end of it, or just have him neutral, or just him being tense by the end of it. But it is nice though. It does kind of wrap up nicely. It really shows Anderson really cares about Connor, and at least, you know, at least Connor's story kind of wraps up really nicely. I would say Connor's story wraps up the best, and by the end of it, you know, you get to see Connor and Anderson, you know, meet up at that fast food joint or whatever it is, fast food stand, concession stand, whatever it is called, with the chicken or whatever, and you get to see the two hug it out. Just really, really emotional, really touching. And it just really pays off really well for those two. So that's really why I really like these two in the end, both gameplay and story-wise. So these two are great characters, really lovable, and that's just all I gotta say about those two. Now, back onto Marcus's thing, you know, like I said, it's the weakest part because no matter what you do, you get the same exact ending anyway. You know, whether you choose a peaceful route or the violent route, you kind of get the same exact, pretty similar ending in a way. I mean, obviously you can do different things with it. You know, you can have a dirty bomb, or you can sing, or you can sacrifice yourself. But if you go through the main route of the peaceful way or the violent way, you get that same cutscene by the end of it, which is like the really weak payoff in a way, because you know, you don't get to see the more dark, devious, you know, deviant, or not deviant, dark, you know, violent side of Marcus. You don't get to see that awake inside of him. That, you know, again, that could have been interesting to see, but you don't really get to see, you know, anything different from that. Obviously, it just feels like this just feels like the same exact thing from the peaceful cutscene, you know, or the peaceful ending. So there's no really a peaceful ending. There's no really a violent ending. It just kind of just all comes together into the same ending anyway, I think. And plus the whole thing with North is like, okay, well, I mean, he did all the things he disagrees with you so much that, you know, it's like, really, you're still telling me that, you know, I'm the hope of Jericho? Even though I disagree with you a whole lot, you know, I don't really do the whole violent thing. I really wish North could have changed as a character, you know, that see some character progression. Maybe, hey, maybe being violent isn't the way after all, you know, like if you pick the peaceful route. But she never really changes. She never really her thing always goes down no matter what you do as a peaceful character. And she never learns from you. She never so it just doesn't really show me that she looks at you as a leader. She just kind of just she gets kind of shoehorns you as this hopeful, you know, or this symbol of hope for the robots. I don't know. It's just you never really see any notable changes from North. She always sticks with the violence. She always wants you to be violent, and if you become peaceful, she always disagrees with you, but she tells you that you're the hope of it, the hope of all Jericho or whatever. So it just really takes you out of the immersion, or take me out of the immersion anyway. So that's just how I really feel about it. I don't know. It's I mean, yeah, I really did not like North. She probably is the least likable character in that game, and unfortunately, she is pretty poorly written in my opinion overall. She does have some moments. I mean, you do kind of feel her in some ways, but she never really changes. So you really get to grasp her um as a as a part of Jericho. You know, she just kind of is there, and she's just getting she just gets disagreed on all the time. So yeah, so I don't know. I mean, yeah, there are people who do want to take the violent route, and maybe that's fine, but for them, but no matter what you do as a peaceful character, she just always disagrees with you. So I that's just something I wanted to emphasize on that. So yeah, I think yeah, that's pretty much it on the whole spoiler thing. I mean, there is that whole thing with Alice being a robot, or yeah, being a robot this whole entire time. That was a pretty good twist, I guess. I really liked Luther. He was a really good character. He was just lovable, this lovable big guy and stuff like that. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I mean, obviously the villains of the story are, you know, is the FBI director or whatever, but he doesn't really add too much to the story. It's all about Marcus, Connor, and the fake Connor, I guess, and then Amanda is kind of there, and just never really explains herself, who she is. I mean, again, you kind of have to investigate. You know, she's an AI program who was modeled after Kamsky's mentor / professor at his school, or at his college. So that's all he got from her, but you don't really get to like really figure out who she is early in the game, nor, you know, at any point until, you know, if you investigate right, you know, at Kamsky's little place or whatever. So I know just another thing is, like, it really tries to emphasize on the investigations and stuff like that. I know, you know, Connor is supposed to be the investigator and all that, but I think it's a little too much. I think you know, a lot of people can miss that, and that causes like the immersion to kind of like just crumple a little bit. So I don't know. I felt like it should have just been added from the first place. You know, we have to know who these people are in order for us to, you know, try to side with him or not. You know, because you have to, because Connor's story is all about siding with either Anderson or with Amanda / Cyberlife. So that's like kind of the award you get from being a machine or being a deviant. So but yeah, obviously being a machine doesn't really pay off if you know, try to make Amanda coincide with, or not coincide, but like side with you the most, because by the end of it, Amanda shows you the new model of Connor, or of the she shows you the model of the RK 900 series, while you're the RK 800 series, and he's gonna get deactivated and all that stuff. So that's like the reward you get for siding with Amanda. It's like, wow, that's pretty fucked up. I don't know if you can actually get the true or the best ending with Anderson, you know, hugging Connor, even if you choose the machine route, you know, because you do still have a pretty peaceful kind of resolve with Anderson, you know, on that rooftop, even if, you know, Connor is trying to snipe Marcus from that position, from that vantage point. I don't know, I could be wrong, but I think really the best ending or best route for Connor is, you know, going through the whole thing with the, you know, going to the Cyberlife assembly plant or storage facility, and trying to wake up the robots, but you get confronted by the fake, the other Connor, and because it really shows you the test between Anderson and Connor's relationship. So it really shows their friendship, how it developed over time, and that really helps wrap up nicely with that secret ending with Anderson hugging Connor. So I think that's pretty much all I gotta say. I think I've said all my main parts for each character's like stories and stuff like that, their weaknesses and stuff like that, their little gaps and where the wheres and whys and who's, hows and all that stuff. So yeah, it's overall it's definitely it was an interesting experience, and this was my first David Cage game I've ever played and got my hands on. So I felt like, you know, was worth it, I guess. But it's definitely the best David Cage game I've experienced somehow, and I definitely got to play this one this time around, and it was definitely something to look to spend time on, I guess. It's not the worst game. It's not the worst David Cage game, definitely. I would say probably in terms of like a big budget David Cage game, it would definitely have to be Beyond Two Souls. That was really, it got really out of hand. It just went nowhere, in my opinion, and it's just kind of like, what is this really all about? I think that's pretty much it from me. I don't know if we'll play another David Cage game from the channel or for Let's Play. We'll see. We'll see how the boys feel by then. Maybe I'll have different people come in for the Let's Play. Maybe who actually is kind of interested in this kind of gameplay, and maybe be a less cynical about it. I don't know. It'll be an interesting angle, but you know, I do like having Josh and Todd being cynical while I am trying to be neutral or something. It, you know, adds interesting contrast in my opinion. But we'll see. We'll see how David Cage develops the next game, and that's all I gotta say for reals. So if you have any comments about what I said in the spoiler section, please leave them down below. Love to read them. You know, Detroit is something interesting to talk about because it does talk about the whole thing with androids becoming self-aware and stuff like that. Are they just as alive as we are, and all that? And that's all there is to it. So thank you guys so much. This has been the entire review on Detroit. I know there's a lot to talk about because it's very story driven, so obviously there's going to be a lot of points, you know, being explained or being talked about or being pointed out for me. So this is definitely the longest review I've done for this format anyway. So yeah, that's Detroit Become Human for you for this review. So thank you guys so much. This has been my review on Detroit Become Human. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you guys so much. I'll see you guys in the next video. Sean out.